Good evening and welcome to tonight's virtual town hall via telephone and online streaming about the budget for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. One thing I'd like to note, if you see building progress as the topic on your screen, our apologies. That's a small mistake on our part. This is in fact a town hall about the budget for the SFMTA fiscal years 2023. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rosie, and I'll be moving us through tonight's call. Tonight, we're going to start with a short presentation from the SFMTA's budget team about the comments we've heard so far in this process. Then we'll move on to hearing your comments. If you know you have a comment, you can get it into the queue. If you're online, you can enter it into the field below the feed. It does prompt you for a question, and while those are welcome, we are especially interested in comments. If you're listening in on the phone, at any time, press *3, and then a team member will take you off the main call and take down your comment. Some callers will be selected to share your comments on air, and if you're listening via the video stream, you can use the field below the streaming player. Once again, for our callers, it's *3 at any time, and we'll route you to a member of our team. Please note that we might not be able to get to everyone's comments on air, but know that every single comment shared with staff will be recorded and reviewed. We'll try to cover as many topics as possible on air. And while all perspectives are encouraged, we do ask that everyone be respectful, curious, and keep their comments under 2 minutes or so. Also, please refrain from comments focused on individuals. With that, we have Jonathan Ruers from SFMTA's Budget Office, who will give us a short overview. This meeting is designed to work for those without digital access, so while there is a slide presentation along with Jared's presentation, everything on screen will be summarized verbally. If you wish to see the presentation and you have computer access, you can start viewing if you're not already at bit.ly/SFMTA listen. And once again, I'll remind folks on the phone, if you'd like to get into the queue, press *3. Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you, Rosie. So we've got our cover slide. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jonathan Ruers. I'm the Acting Chief Financial Officer of the SFMTA. So I'm going to go through a quick presentation with all of you, and then we look forward to hearing all of your comments. I cannot yet see the slides. I see myself. There we go. Thank you. So tonight's town hall, okay, whoa, the slides went all, well, you know what? I'm just going to go off the notes and the slides. If you see them, you see them. Okay, we want to go back one slide. There we go. So we're doing the budget process a little bit differently this cycle. Most often, what tends to happen is the MTA puts together a budget. It's sort of pre-baked, and we go through a process just to get feedback on the various proposals and programs. This time, we wanted to take a different approach, and before developing those specific proposals or programs, we really wanted to get a sense of what the community thought the MTA should be doing, could do better, or should be focusing its resources. So tonight, we're going to be talking about some of the results of that outreach process that we've gone through over the past couple of weeks since our board of directors had its workshop. So some of the things that we've done is have a public, full 2-day workshop with the SFMTA board. We covered a lot of topics, programs, proposals, ideas, but really to give a sense to the community and to the board what our current operating environment and financial environment looks like. We sent out a survey, and this survey was very similar to one we did last spring, which was scientific-based, general telephonic and mobile. But we used the similar questions to get longitudinal data and really give people the opportunity to directly tell us what they thought was important. We've done a number of public listening sessions. We've offered to more than 300 stakeholders to come out and talk. So just before this, I was out with one of those groups presenting with Jim Morrill, one of our analysts, about the budget. And tonight we're doing our digital town hall. So just to give you a sense of what we have done, we've reached out to over 3,000 stakeholders, 150 community groups throughout San Francisco. We've done ads in multiple languages, so everybody has the ability to provide us feedback. Social media, we have a website on sfmta.com with survey links. That survey is also in 4 languages available to people. And we've also done paper surveys in 4 languages. So we've done our very best to reach out to as many people as possible. Next slide. So what we have received is over 700 responses from the online surveys, and those again have come in 3 different languages. We've received 690, so all forums that we've gone to, and this one being one of them tonight, from the listening sessions, we have recorded those comments and we've been collating that data using synthesis to really see what insights we might get. And then at the Board of Directors workshop, we had over 100 comments, both from the MTA board and from members of the public. We'll continue to collect these surveys over the next 2 weeks, and we'll give the final results of that survey on April 5th during the public hearing on the budget. We'll give a preliminary review. Actually, you're seeing it first tonight. This town hall is where we're going to release this information. The MTA board will get it next Tuesday at their board meeting. Next slide. So the first question, again, we base it on that survey. We asked people to have a first priority and a second priority based on a number of elements. And actually not that surprising. The number one priority, so if you can't see it, I will tell you 46% of respondents said improving the speed and frequency and reliability of Muni was their highest priority. Second was making sure that neighborhoods and that we were improving transportation and especially making that available for households of low income and persons of color. So again, focusing on equity consistent with the values in our strategic plan. And then third, and this has been coming up, improving personal safety for Muni riders. That has been a topic that has been coming up. It is one of the top 3 issues out of the first priority. And then next was traffic congestion and improvements to safety on our streets. Next slide. So when we take a look at that second priority, so again, people have the opportunity to tell us what their first priority, their second priority. Speed and reliability still top there, 23%. But as people thought about it, again, equity, second highest priority, safety, third highest priority. So even when people made choices first or second, those 3 things, personal safety for Muni riders, making sure that we focus on equity as we put back and or expand the service, and improving speed and reliability were those top priorities. Congestion and traffic also rise here. Maintaining things and keeping them in a state of good repair, when we look at those second tier priorities, were also very important to the public. Next slide, please. So then there were a number of initiatives that we looked at. And for those of you that can see, we have green and blue bars, and those are the higher priority elements there where people thought things were extremely important and very important. Extremely or very important at nearly 93% was reducing delays to make Muni more reliable. So reliability, again, a key priority when people could choose specific elements that they want the agency to focus on. That was the one that really stood out. Providing quick, convenient transit access to all parts of San Francisco. Again, very high, over 80%, 85, 86% of people thought that was very important. Just some other elements here of interest, improving personal safety. Again, that was over 70% of people thought that was extremely or very important. Improving Muni service, again, for those who need it most. So again, focusing on equity in the 70%. So again, looking at multiple channels, first or second priority, or a list of things that people could show that was important, was evaluated. The other thing that we're seeing is expanding reduced fare programs. That had the support of nearly 50% of people, so 59% of people. So we're getting a clear pattern on what people would like us to focus on, and we will, again, develop budgetary programs and policy priorities against some of these things that we are hearing here and tonight. Next slide, please. So just some things to get a sense of and what March 15th is going to look like next Tuesday. So if you hadn't heard, recent press release, the MTA was successful in a national competitive grant, securing another $115 million for additional federal transit relief. So that will help us as we have resources available to put back the service. We'll be talking about our fare policy and some of the things I mentioned this evening, and some of the data we've received around that, and discount programs will be discussed on March 15th. We'll also be talking about our parking policies and the use of the streets, revenues generated from parking and how they're used at the MTA and budgeted for, and then any proposals or programs. So again, those things that are responsive to the things that we've heard. And again, we haven't proposed anything until we got some of this data, and this data will lead into that. We actually usually post items on Thursday, and we haven't done that yet because we wanted to have this session and also get this data and integrate it into our presentation for the MTA board. Tight schedule. City charter requires us to get the budget done by May 1st, but we absolutely wanted to make sure everybody had their voice and that we considered everything that we heard before making any final proposal. So next slide, please. So just some additional comments. Over all of these meetings, we did receive a number of kind of specific comments that we heard about. There's some high-level priorities you'll see here is emphasis on safety, more frequent lines and available lines to people, a request that we do not raise fares, and take a second look at our discount programs, working on congestion across San Francisco streets. One thing that actually rose when we looked at specific comments, and so people could make open comments. So we're also looking at all the open comments and seeing if there's consistency in thought, again, through synthesis. Taking a look at our shelters and stations and kind of the cleanliness and the safety around that. And then finally, the state of good repair of the transit system. So again, when looking at individual written comments, not, a pre-selected list of one priority or second or a bunch of programs, when people could just make an open comment and tell us what was important when we collated all that, those were the areas that are rising to the top for us to take a look at, and we will be responsive to that. Next slide, please. So that ends the quickened presentation. Get your voices heard, get your comments in. This is the chance to do it. We have about a month to go, and hopefully we will get a budget adopted and to the Mayor and Board of Supervisors. Thank you very much, and I will turn it back over to Rosie.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was great. Like Jonathan said, we'd like to open it up for comments, and if folks would like to call in, we'd love to hear your comments and take you on air. If you're online, as many of you have done, you can see where you can enter your comment or question into the field below the feed. And as we said earlier, it does prompt you for a question, and while those are welcome, we are especially interested in comments. If you're calling in on the phone, please press *3 on your phone, and a member of our team, you'll be routed to them, take you off the main call and take down your comment. Some callers will be selected to share your comments on air. And as I said before, if you're listening via the video stream, you can use the field below it, the streaming player to enter into your comments. I want to note that we may not get to everyone's comments on air tonight, but please know that every single comment shared with staff will be recorded and reviewed. We'll try to cover as many topics as possible on air. To get us started, let's start off with some of the comments coming in online. Jim, I'll turn it over to you for that.
Thanks, Rosie. So first question / comment we have, it goes back to that $115 million ARP that you mentioned earlier, Jonathan. B-Rod would like to know, what will that additional federal funding help us with in 2022 in terms of service restoration?
Yeah, thank you. So the MTA has been kind of future focused throughout the entire pandemic. How people are going to use the system in the future, focusing on equity and expanding service for those who need it most. We are in a period where in the next 18 months, people are going to transition to a new and different way of life. And it is very important that as they make their mobility choices, that we are, and Muni is a choice they want to make. So in many cases, as we look at telecommuting, people going back to work, where a lot of people had to take transit and a lot of people still do, and we want to make sure the service is there and reliable for them. a lot of people will have a choice. And so it's very important, and why we wanted to hear from all of you about that. So I think the $115 million will really go and allow us to make those investments in the service, in the safety of the system, to get people to come back and to help stabilize our other revenue sources, our transit fare revenues, our parking revenues. So I think that will be a huge part of how we think about using that $115 million.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. We'll just keep rolling with some of the comments that we received online. Next up is Mark Norton. He asked if you could please detail the fare increases that SFMTA is considering.
So the MTA doesn't have any, there's no specific, we raise this fare, we raise this fare, we raise that fare. What I will tell you was in the base budget, so what was presented to the MTA board on February 3rd, was the transit fare revenues that would be generated if the MTA implemented the fare policy proposal that was approved by the MTA board in April of 2020, just before the pandemic. So the agency has an automatic indexing policy. So if the consumer price index goes up a certain amount, if the cost of labor within the agency goes up a certain amount, we automatically increase fares. What was different in the last budget cycle, now just 2 years ago, was that we chose not to just raise fares across the board. We proposed not to raise the cash fare. We kept a lot of our discount passes at the same price, but we talked about things like there's a discount for Clipper. It was a 50-cent discount. We talked about perhaps eliminating that. We talked about adding free muni for those who are experiencing homelessness, and we actually did implement that throughout the pandemic. So the baseline budget just assumed that status quo, that the MTA board had approved that, and we would move forward with their pre-approved policy. That will be completely open and up for discussion next Tuesday. And a lot of the feedback we've received through this process will impact that discussion and the proposals that will show up. So nothing is fixed and set in stone. We just essentially went with the baseline proposal, which was called the Equity Clipper proposal, and you will find that publicly on sfmta.com back again in March and April of 2020.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So it sounds like
if you don't mind, I'll just jump in real quick. We have a lot of great comments and questions coming in online, but I know we do have callers. So to remind everyone, if you're listening in or calling in on the phone and you'd like to make a comment, ask a question, or maybe be taken live, please press *3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be routed to a member of our team so they can take that down and we can bring it up. In the meantime, though, let's keep going where we're at. So Jim, please jump right back on in. And apologies for my disruption. You know, I think we may have just lost Jim. So let's keep going. As I said earlier, if you are calling in on the phone and you'd like to be routed to a member of our team, please press *3. In the meantime, let's get to one of the other online comments.
And sorry about that, Rosie. I am back on now. So I see a comment from PJ who mentions that in the past budget cycle, he gathered 1,500 postcards and signatures and sent them to the Board of Supervisors. And he's wondering if he still has enough time to do more outreach for this particular budget cycle. Is there more time for us to accept more outreach?
I can try to take that. So, unfortunately, the charter of the City and County of San Francisco sets the deadlines for the budget. we are happy to go to any group and present. And we've asked numerous groups, like, we will come to you and talk about the budget and hear what you have to say about programs, including fares, parking, enforcement, all the things that the MTA does. But the charter does require that the MTA board adopt a budget and deliver it to the mayor, who then sends it to the Board of Supervisors by May 1st. So we will still have 3 more hearings. The first one is next Tuesday, so I encourage people to participate. And if you would like us to come talk to you anytime between now and the adoption of the budget, we are happy to do so.
Thank you. Yes, we would definitely be happy to receive more feedback, both at the budget hearing, and we would love to come and see you guys in person. So the next question is from Ryder since 1985, and he wants to know more about the Next Bus, the Muni Next Bus, and the bus shelters, and whether we can make improvements with that service.
So that's actually something that that this process has given us a lot of feedback on, and it's something I've been actually thinking about. Like, I'm actually in charge of both of those things. So our technology and system integrations team in my division is implementing our customer information system. We will launch a new Muni mobile application, and hopefully we'll be replacing the digital signs in the shelters. And we're working with our contractors on the condition of our shelters and those programs, because I do think, and I think our transit director, Julie Kirschbaum, very much agrees that, again, we want to get people to come back to Muni and use the system. And so we absolutely want to focus on and make those improvements. So it's good to hear that some of the things that we're considering are a priority through this process and this comment. And yes, we are actively working on it. And I think you will see a lot of things happen next fall.
For folks who are listening in, I want to remind you again, if you are watching on the live stream, we appreciate all your comments and questions, and we'll continue moving through those. But if you would like to ask one on air, please call in by pressing *3, and you'll be routed to a member of our team. I'd also like to acknowledge that the comments from the same people aren't necessarily the public's priorities. And so like we said before, we want to express as many diverse views as we can. So we're going to do our best not to repeat ourselves and move along to some other folks that have commented. Jim, I'll hand it back to you.
Sure. I think actually that somebody made a comment that they noticed that the priorities that we put into the survey are the priorities that they also would like to see done. Do you think that we should have provided more options? Jonathan, or possibly should people continue to use the open option to highlight any other comments they would like to make?
So there's a couple things going on. So one, as a nerdy data analyst, right, we're looking to get longitudinal data. So for people to understand, how people's opinions and choices are changing over time. So I think that's why between the spring survey we did, the scientific survey, the SFMTA community survey, and what we're asking now, we're seeing similarities, because we want to know, how are people's opinions changing? What do they think? After a year, do they think we should be doing something different? Every comment we received, we are recording and we are categorizing, as I kind of showed you here. So absolutely use those open comments to provide us other things. Those are being categorized, looked at, and will be reported on, and absolutely part of our consideration. We want the widest possible feedback and thoughts from people to get ideas about what we should be proposing and doing.
Great. One thing I want to point out, David, I see that you are waiting in the queue to speak for your comment, but I don't think that we have you on the phone. So if you can call in and then press *3, I will be happy to get to you. Right, moving along. I think we do have some other comments, Jim, if you want to call those out, as we see what else comes up in the queue.
Sure thing. There is a question about the Muni Metro subway and whether or not we will be going back to 24 trains in the subway. This may be a question for KANSAI.
I think that would be a better question directed to our service planning team, so we may have to get back to them with an answer to this question.
Got it. Sorry about that, KANSAI. Jonathan, do you know anything about the subway, Muni Metro subway, and what's going on with the Muni Metro subway in terms of state of good repair?
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly, the single seat ride to downtown. So, a couple of our lines do have that. I think there's continuing discussion about the J, but I believe we have put the J back in the subway right now. And I think congestion is an element of the decision about whether or not it will remain there. On the 24, vehicles in the tunnel at any one time, that is tied directly to important investment we'll be making in our capital improvement program, and one of the things that will come up on March 15th, and that is the replacement of the Muni train control system. And so that is in our 5-year capital improvement program. We are, in the presentation that we've made in the past, we've talked a lot about state and federal grants that are upcoming, and that is a top priority project for us to advance to allow the MTA and Muni to have a greater number of vehicles in the tunnel at any particular time, and to manage the efficiency of the Muni Metro overall.
Great. I'm going to jump back in. One, we do have a caller on the phone, which I'm excited about, and we'll get to that in just a moment. For anyone who is watching online that hasn't called in, I want to just give you the number in case you've changed your mind. If you want to dial in, the main number is 833-362-1164. And once you're on, as we said, press *3, and you'll be routed to a member of our team. Again, if you'd like to call in, the number is 833-362-1164. And with that, we will take our first caller. David, I will be bringing you live in just one moment. All right, David.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right. It is the famous and elusive David Pilpel. Hello, Rosie, Violetta, Jonathan, Jim, KANSAI, maybe Peter Lauterborn, cast of thousands behind the scenes. Okay. Please post today's presentation. I'm still looking for last week's presentation, which was not posted as a PDF on any of the websites. I would love to see that. There are some slides that are updated or slightly different from previous slides, and I like to collect PDFs. I don't know why. So given the recent FTA announcements, I'm wondering when the new fiscal cliff date is for MTA, assuming a reasonable budget adoption and continuing to receive revenues at the current rate and expend at the current rate with reasonable assumptions about planning over the next period of time. Is this does this buy us another 6 months, another 18 months, another 11 and a half months? What's the sense back of the envelope? Next question, when will the presentation for Tuesday's board meeting be posted, since it is not posted now? Is that later tonight? Is it tomorrow morning? Is it, et cetera? Can you talk very briefly about the operating and capital uncertainties that drive both the operating budget and the CIP for the next 2 years? I'm particularly interested in HR having a hiring plan, both to refill key HR functions and recruit and retain other frontline and support functions within MTA. I'm concerned about the effects on state of good repair with the investments proposed, both operating and capital. And again, back on one-time versus ongoing funds so that we're not using one-time money for ongoing programs, nor should we be using ongoing funds. Well, I guess we can be using ongoing funds for one-time projects, but we should be careful not to make the structural deficit worse. And that can happen, and that's to be avoided. I would spend a second talking about the organization chart. I believe that there are too many direct reports to Jeff Tumlin. I would reduce that, and I'm happy to sketch that out and provide it if anyone cares. In general terms, I would have a deputy director for transit, deputy director for streets, deputy director for finance and administration, a chief deputy, whatever, the Tom McGuire position, and a small director's office with the chief of staff and the small board of directors division. And everybody else gets moved into one of those groups. The other things, CP&C, system safety, all that other stuff can be moved elsewhere, and that would have much more clear reporting lines, and I can talk about the great benefits of all that if anyone cares. In general, I would reduce the number of initiatives and projects within the agency and do the ones that are selected better and focus on daily operations, back to basics, less of the we can do everything for everybody. I'm wrapping up. The key message I want to make here is that back to basics. I don't think it's good for the agency to propose new initiatives when, frankly, MTA cannot and does not provide the current daily transit service because there are not enough operators. There is enough equipment, but not enough operators, not enough frontline people, and continuing challenges in hiring and retention. And finally, to the previous caller, there is a Muni Metro core capacity study to which the SFCTA allocated $1,150,000 on Tuesday, and that is supposed to address all kinds of things related to operating Muni Metro, including the communication-based train control system, longer trains, reducing bottlenecks, all kinds of things. And that's, as I understand, is supposed to be its own project and program with outreach and various study deliverables that we'll see in the next few years that flows from ConnectSF and the previous MTC core capacity study. I'll leave it at that for the moment. You've got a number of things that you can address in my comments. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, David. Yes, a number of things. One thing I want to point out and acknowledge is that we have other callers, including Mark, asked about the Tuesday agenda posting and the timing on that. So just one thing to flag as Jonathan and other folks jump in to answer some of the other questions and address those comments. So David, we're going to keep you on the line and let these folks answer your wonderful questions. Always great to hear from you. And so I will hand that to them, but in the meantime, you'll be on air with us.
So that was a lot. I think comments are appreciated and well thought out. On the when is the presentation going to be posted? It will be posted tomorrow, probably around midday. The reason being is we wanted to wait for this forum, and we wanted to collect all the information and see, give everybody their voice for the final proposals and ideas that we'll put forward for discussion next Tuesday. So you will see it tomorrow. That said, this is a very and I'm the acting CFO, so I've been thinking deeply about a lot of this. We have a structural deficit. We need to invest in the system now to get people back, to stabilize and restore our ongoing revenues. We had a Muni Reliability Working Group with recommendations just before the pandemic, and we haven't been fully able to implement those recommendations. And we want to support the recovery of the city. So those are lots of different dials. Do you close the structural deficit and keep everything the same? Do you invest in foundational programs to get the riders back so you can make the fare revenue, so you can make the parking revenue, and you can replace those one-time dollars? That has been very difficult, and we've been kind of moving the dials to see what will work. Come what may, another source of revenue will have to show up for the MTA at some point in the future. We had a structural deficit before the pandemic. We will have one. And, to answer David's question, the time is still fiscal year 25. Whether or not the dollar amount changes from what we said in the base or more, we just cannot sustain things past fiscal year 25. Even with the $115 million, because we're seeing the revenue situation change. And so we will be making revenue adjustments, again, as part of those trade-off discussions based on a lot of things that we heard on Tuesday. And I will be covering that with the board and with the public. Investing in state of good repair, and I think David asked about capital. We do have a subway renewal program that we're trying to kick off and fully fund through our fixed guideway program, and you will see that we have added dollars to our core infrastructure to make the system more reliable. You will see we're focusing on our facilities and buildings that need that investment. Our top 4 projects in the capital improvement program are all state of good repair. And being at the agency now for over a decade, I think that is the first time that I've seen that be the situation. So we have definitely heard the public that they want us to focus on state of good repair in the core infrastructure, and we will be in our upcoming 5-year CIP. There is a gap on capital. And so we are hoping that the upcoming general obligation bond and the San Francisco County Transportation Authority reviewed the new sales tax program this past Tuesday. We are hoping that the voters of San Francisco support those efforts. But we'll have to wait and see. But we are prepared one way or the other. So that's kind of the general situation. I think there'll be a very robust discussion on Tuesday. And again, we wanted to get the maximum amount of feedback because what you say tonight could impact what we show and talk about on Tuesday. So I encourage you to continue to share your comments and ideas.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you. Oh, go, David, if you have more follow-up.
Did you want me to follow up very briefly? Because I don't know how many others there are, and I would like to hear from others. We do have a few more questions.
Okay. Yes, we would.
I would like to hear from Mark Norton, Herb Weiner, anybody else, et cetera. I want to hear what others think. I think one of the traps here is that even if you're doing the right thing on state of good repair and trying to not make the structural deficit worse and, in fact, close that gap, that whether it's some Vision Zero initiative or whatever is appropriate or however that plays out with the MOUs with the unions, that $150 million can disappear very quickly. And so I am concerned about how even the best laid plans can go off track. And given all of the uncertainties, in particular about how many people are going back to work in the office and how travel patterns are going to be. I mean, even at gas prices this week or any number of other things. There could be another COVID surge. I mean, there's so much uncertainty that to make big plans like we need to, radically increase the size of the fleet, or we need to do any number of other things. It just seems imprudent to me in the next 2 years. I think just continuing to do what is important now, to do it right, to do it well, to be positioned, to have capacity to do other things if and when things get better and different and whatnot is good, but to make concrete plans about building a subway under Geary and out 19th Avenue and all of the other Michigas in there just seems not prudent. And so I would really suggest a back to basics approach, whatever efficiencies you can find, minimize that structural deficit, state of good repair, et cetera. I think I've made my points clear. I think the people know where to find me if you need anything further in follow-up. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. And when it comes to basics, we do have a question from Anonymous. What will you be doing to make the end run more reliably? Can't count on one being there when I need it, and I have to wait past the scheduled time. So KANSAI, I'm going to kick that one over to you.
Sure, thank you. So there are a few things happening. One is there is a Muni Forward project on the N corridor that will be starting planning this year, and that will be aimed at speed and reliability increases along the N line. And then a bit longer term, there is also the train control system replacement, which will allow for additional trains in the subway and will also help with subway congestion, which would help with reliability and performance along the N line as well. And then longer term, the Muni Metro core capacity planning study will identify additional strategies that will help increase system capacity and improve reliability system-wide, and that would see benefits for the N line as well, eventually.
Great. And while we have you, KANSAI, I see another question. This one is from Hyatt. Will the 8AX and 8BX buses be brought back?
I believe the current timeline for that in the 2022 service restoration is mid-April.
Great. Glad to hear that we're getting more lines back online.
I'll jump in one more time just to remind folks that if you're listening tonight on the phone and you'd like to call in, please press *3 at any time and you'll be routed to a member of our team so you can give them your comment or question and bring you live. Lost my spot. But if you're watching online and haven't called in but are now interested in doing so, you're welcome to. Let me just pull up the number. It's 833-362-1164 and press *3 to be routed to a member of our team. Again, the number is 833-362-1164. And then you press *3. And we're still taking comments as they come in online. But again, if you'd like to call in, we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Rosie. And I would like to acknowledge that we've seen quite a few comments that are asking for more outreach. We would like to do as much outreach as we can. It is our job at the SFMTA to engage with the public and to do some community budgeting as best we can. If you happen to slip through the cracks in terms of a direct email offering our one-on-one listening sessions, we truly apologize. We did offer this service to almost everyone on our mailing list, up to 3,000 different individual groups and members. But again, we are still here and we are still available. So please reach out to us, budget@sfmta.com, and we would be happy to meet with you. We do have one more comment from Rider since 1985. He or she, excuse me, would like to know what are we going to do? Do we have any plan around the crowding that is starting to build up as more and more people come back to work in the city? Jonathan, do we have anything in our budget, or is there anything that's an approach in our budgeting that would lead us to address some of the crowding issues?
Yeah, so that's part of the customer experience and how people are experiencing transit right now in the city. So on a project level, you know, improving again our customer information system is something we're doing. So there's a greater level of predictability. We know that crowding is definitely an issue. Adding service back and adding lines back so people have alternatives is another thing that we'll be doing and is funded in the budget. Making sure that we have the supervisory staff out on the streets and in our transportation management center is another way to better manage that and the experience for our customers. So we are looking at ideas and investments to deal with that. I live in the Mission. I'm a frequent rider of the 14 and 49, and I'm experiencing the exact same things that are being talked about right now. I think the plus is that people are coming back to the system and feel comfortable to do so and to get on a crowded bus. But the delta is that it's a crowded bus. So we are working to get that service out there. So again, the April service changes, and again, using the dollars to invest in the system to make that experience as people come back the best it can be.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we have about 8 minutes left. Happy to continue to take some comments from the public. And if Jonathan has any last comments, you should prepare them as well. Looks like David has just, I guess this is not quite a comment directed towards the public. So anyway, we have about 5 more minutes for comments. Please bring them in, or you can call the line and hit *3.
I'll point out we do have a couple of comments in here in terms of discounts and fares. Is there someone who could articulate a bit what the fare programs are?
I can give a little bit of a preview. So again, the equity clipper proposal was assumed in the baseline and the revenues that would be raised by making those fare changes, which again were pre-approved by the board. The agency has constantly been looking at expanding the eligibility of the Lifeline program. So that's a 50% discount on a monthly pass. In our new Muni mobile application, we will have the ability to do an accumulator pass, which means, you know, if you can't afford the Lifeline pass at $40 or the full fast pass, you can pay the cash fare and pay your way up to free transit for the remainder of the month. So as part of our new customer information system, we're putting the technology in place to allow for that. I think also, because again, people's mobility is changing, we're considering doing a 10-trip monthly pass. So maybe people don't want to pay for the full fast pass, but maybe for $20 or something around that, they can get a discount and use those 10 trips within a month whenever they need to get to where they need to. So we're looking at different product mixes. Again, feedback from this forum tonight and what we hear will kind of impact what recommendations we make next week around that. So leaving it to the last second to get some feedbacks and thoughts around that. But those are the things that we're looking at right now, and we'll have a conversation about on Tuesday.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. And as we just have a couple of minutes left tonight, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jim. And thank you all members of the public for joining us tonight. And that about wraps up today's listening session. The content will be posted online, as several folks have asked. We will be posting that. And the next steps in this process will be to sift through all of these comments we've heard tonight and to bring them to our board. We'll be presenting to our board of directors on March 15th and again on April 5th, both starting at 1 p.m. Again, that's March 15th and April 5th, 1 p.m. Also, if you'd like to follow up with staff, please feel free to email budget@sfmta.com, or you can call 415-646-4785. Again, if you'd like to send in further comments or questions, you can email budget@sfmta.com, or you can call 415-646-4785. Thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. We truly appreciate it, and we hope you have a great night.